The vacuum of space doesn't care about your species. It doesn't distinguish between human breath and alien whispers. When the life support fails and the hull breaches, death comes equally to all who dare venture into the infinite darkness. But sometimes in that crushing emptiness where hope goes to die, humanity shows what it truly means to be human. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The emergency klaxon pierced through the steady hum of the UES Meridian's engines, its red warning lights painting the corridor walls in bloody shadows. Marcus Chen wiped grease from his hands and set down his plasma wrench, the familiar weight of dread settling in his stomach. 3 months into their cargo run to the Kepler colonies, and this was the 5th major system failure this week. The Meridian wasn't supposed to be out here in Sector 7 Alpha. This route through the asteroid fields was reserved for military vessels with proper shielding and maneuverability systems. But corporate had pushed them to take the shortcut, promising bonus pay for early delivery of the medical supplies and terraforming equipment stacked in their cargo holds. What they hadn't mentioned was that this sector had become a war zone. Marcus jogged through the narrow corridors toward Engineering Bay 3, his boots echoing against the metal grating. The ship groaned around him, a sound that had become increasingly common as they pushed through the gravitational anomalies of the asteroid belt. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, calm but strained. "All department heads to the bridge. We've got a situation." The engineering bay doors hissed open, revealing chaos. Sparks cascaded from an overloaded relay station while coolant mist hissed from a cracked pipe. Tommy Liu, barely 19 and still green from the academy, struggled with a diagnostic scanner that refused to cooperate. "What's the damage?" Marcus called out, already moving toward the main console. "Power fluctuations in the forward sections." Tommy replied, sweat beading on his forehead. "Started about 10 minutes ago. The gravitational sensors are going crazy, like something massive just appeared off our starboard bow." Marcus frowned, pulling up the engineering schematics on his personal tablet. The Meridian was a solid ship, built for the long haul, but she was showing her age. 23 years of deep space runs had worn down systems that corporate was too cheap to properly replace. He'd filed 17 requisitions for critical upgrades in the past year alone, all denied due to budget constraints. The intercom crackled again. "Marcus, get up here now. Bring your emergency kit." Something in the captain's voice made his blood run cold. Sarah Rodriguez had been running cargo ships for 15 years. She didn't rattle easily. Marcus grabbed his toolkit and headed for the bridge, his mind racing through possibilities. Engine failure could strand them in hostile territory. Life support malfunction could kill them all within hours. Hull breach would be even quicker. The bridge bustled with quiet efficiency when he arrived. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood at the medical station, her dark hair pulled back in the practical bun she always wore during emergencies. Lieutenant Mitchell hunched over the tactical display, his jaw set in the grim expression that meant trouble. Captain Rodriguez stood at the center viewport, staring out at something Marcus couldn't see from his position. "Captain, you wanted to see me?" She turned, and Marcus saw something he'd never seen in her eyes before. Uncertainty mixed with a determination that bordered on desperation. "We picked up a distress beacon 20 minutes ago," she said, gesturing toward the main display. "Automated transmission, standard galactic frequency." "But Marcus, it's not human." The words hung in the air like a challenge. For 3 years, humanity had been locked in bitter conflict with the Vorthan Empire. What had started as territorial disputes over mining rights had escalated into full-scale war. The aliens had proven ruthless, attacking civilian vessels and showing no mercy to prisoners. Official policy was clear. Any Vorthan ship was to be considered hostile. Could be a trap, Lieutenant Mitchell said, not looking up from his console. "Standard Vorthan tactic. Send out fake distress signals to lure in humanitarian vessels, then capture or destroy them." Dr. Vasquez shook her head. "The transmission isn't coming from a ship, James. It's a single life pod, barely holding together from what our sensors can tell. No weapons, no escort vessels in range." Marcus moved to the engineering station and called up the sensor data. The readings told a story of desperation. The pod's power systems were failing, life support dropping to critical levels. Whatever was inside had maybe an hour left before the cold vacuum claimed another victim. "The war's been brutal," Captain Rodriguez said quietly. "We've all lost people. I know how you feel about them, Marcus. Your brother." She didn't need to finish. Lieutenant David Chun had died when the Vorthans attacked the civilian transport Harmony 6 months ago. 300 colonists, including women and children, lost to alien aggression. Marcus had volunteered for this deep space run, partly to get away from the constant reminders of loss. "But this isn't a military vessel," the captain continued. "We're not soldiers. We're cargo haulers with medical supplies that could save thousands of human lives in the colonies. Do we have the right to condemn someone to death just because of their species?" The question cut deeper than Marcus expected. In his toolkit lay the emergency atmospheric processors that could extend a failing life pod systems for days. His expertise could mean the difference between rescue and death for whoever was trapped in that metal coffin drifting through space. The bridge fell silent except for the steady beep of sensors and the distant hum of the ship's engines. Outside the viewport, stars wheeled slowly as the Meridian maintained its course. Somewhere in that darkness, time was running out for a being whose only crime might be belonging to the wrong species in the wrong war. Marcus looked around at his crewmates. These people had become his family during the long months between worlds. They trusted his judgment, just as he trusted theirs. The decision they made in the next few minutes would define not just who lived or died, but who they were as human beings. The distress beacon continued its automated plea, a tiny voice crying out in the vast emptiness, waiting for someone to answer. Captain Rodriguez broke the silence first. "I'm not asking for a vote. This is my ship, my decision. But I want to know where everyone stands before we change course." Dr. Vasquez spoke immediately. "My oath doesn't distinguish between species. If there's someone dying out there, I have to help." Lieutenant Mitchell's response came slower, weighted with military training and bitter experience. "Captain, with respect, we're carrying critical medical supplies to Kepler Colony. 15,000 civilians are counting on those vaccines and surgical equipment. If we delay our arrival by even a day, people will die. Human people." Marcus understood Mitchell's position. The lieutenant had served 3 tours in the frontier wars before joining merchant service. He'd seen entire outposts wiped out by Vorthan raids, families torn apart by an enemy that showed no mercy. But as Marcus stared at the sensor readouts, he couldn't shake the image of something small and helpless drifting in the void. How long would a rescue take? Captain Rodriguez asked. Marcus ran quick calculations on his tablet. "If we alter course now, we can reach the pod in 47 minutes. Retrieval and medical assessment, maybe another hour. We'd lose approximately 6 hours total from our scheduled arrival." 6 hours, Dr. Vasquez repeated. "That's the difference between life and death for whoever's in that pod." The tactical display flickered as Tommy Lou's voice came through the intercom from engineering. "Captain, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions throughout this sector. Whatever battle happened here was recent. Debris fields everywhere, some of it still hot." Marcus pulled up the extended sensor sweep on his console. The data painted a picture of devastation. Twisted metal fragments that had once been starships tumbled through space, their hulls cracked open like broken eggs. Some pieces bore the angular design characteristics of Vorthan vessels, others the rounded profiles of human ships. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. A graveyard where two civilizations had met in violence. Jesus, Lieutenant Mitchell whispered. This wasn't just a skirmish. This was a full fleet engagement. Dr. Vasquez moved closer to the display, her medical training making her notice details others might miss. Look at the scorch patterns on the debris. Energy weapons, kinetic strikes, even chemical explosives. Both sides threw everything they had at each other. Captain Rodriguez studied the tactical readout with growing concern. The question is, are there any survivors besides our mystery pod? And more importantly, are there any intact warships that might object to our presence? The Meridian sensors were designed for navigation and cargo monitoring, not military reconnaissance. They could detect large objects and energy signatures, but subtle threats might slip through unnoticed. Marcus realized they were flying blind through a battlefield that could still harbor dangers. Tommy, Marcus called through the intercom. Run a full spectrum analysis on all debris. I want to know if anything out there is still active. Already on it, Marcus. Most of the wrecks are cold, but I'm picking up 3 separate power signatures. 2 are definitely dead ships with emergency beacons still running. The third is different. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Different how? It's moving under its own power, but the signature is weak. Could be a damaged ship trying to limp home, or it could be someone playing dead until we get closer. The bridge fell quiet again as everyone processed this information. Captain Rodriguez walked to the main viewport, her hands clasped behind. Her back in the gesture Marcus recognized as her thinking pose. Outside, the asteroid field drifted past like sleeping giants, their surfaces scarred by weapons, fire, and impact craters. There's something else, Dr. Vasquez said, studying her. Medical sensor readings. The life pod's biosignature is fading faster than it should. Whatever's inside isn't just running out of air. They're injured badly. Marcus looked at the data stream flowing across his console. The pod's medical transmitters painted a grim picture. Massive trauma, possible internal bleeding, and what appeared to be severe hypothermia as the pod's heating systems failed. Even if they reached the survivor in time, there was no guarantee they could save them. Captain, Lieutenant Mitchell said carefully, I've been thinking about the tactical situation. If this was a fleet engagement, there should be other survivors. Human survivors. Escape pods, damaged ships, wounded personnel. Why are we only detecting one Vorthan signal? The implication hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Marcus understood what Mitchell was suggesting. In the chaos of battle, it was possible that human survivors had already been rescued or had made it to safety. But a lone Vorthan survivor, injured and helpless, might have been deliberately left behind by their own forces. You're saying they abandoned one of their own? Dr. Vasquez asked, her voice tight with emotion. I'm saying Vorthan military doctrine prioritizes the mission over individual lives, Mitchell replied. We've seen it before. They'll sacrifice entire ships if it means gaining a tactical advantage. Marcus found himself thinking about his brother David again. The official report had been clinical in its details. The Harmony had been carrying civilian refugees from a contested world when the Vorthan attack fleet arrived. The aliens had ignored all attempts at communication, treating the transport as a legitimate military target, despite its civilian status and clear distress signals. But this was different. This wasn't a military vessel or a strategic target. This was a single life pod adrift in space, its occupants slowly dying while they debated the morality of rescue. Marcus realized that whatever decision they made would define not just the next few hours, but the kind of people they were willing to become. The power signature Tommy detected, Marcus said suddenly. Can we get a better read on its location relative to the pod? Tommy's voice crackled through. The intercom after a moment. About 2 million kilometers spinward, moving on an intercept course with our current position. At present speed, it would reach us in approximately 14 hours. Captain Rodriguez turned from the viewport. Plenty of time to complete a rescue and be gone before any potential threat arrives. Or plenty of time for them to call for reinforcements if they detect us, Lieutenant Mitchell countered. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had dedicated her life to preserving it. Captain, I've taken an oath to do no harm. But that oath also means I cannot stand by and watch someone die when I have the power to save them. Regardless of species, regardless of politics, regardless of war. Marcus looked around the bridge at his crewmates. These people had become his family during the long months of deep space travel. They shared meals, stories, fears, and hopes. They trusted each other with their lives every day. Now they faced a choice that would test the very foundation of that trust. The distress beacon continued its automated transmission, each pulse a countdown to death. Somewhere in the vast darkness, a being clung to life in a failing pod, unaware that salvation might be within reach. The question was whether humanity would prove worthy of the name, or whether the war had already claimed something more precious than territory or resources. It had claimed their souls. Captain Rodriguez made her decision with the quiet authority that had earned her command of the Meridian. Marcus, plot a course to the distress beacon. Dr. Vasquez, prep the medical bay for emergency surgery. Lieutenant Mitchell, I want constant monitoring of that unknown contact. The bridge erupted into controlled activity as the crew shifted into rescue mode. Marcus felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as he input the course corrections into the navigation system. The Meridian's engines hummed with increased power as they altered trajectory toward the failing life pod. ETA 43 minutes, Marcus announced. I'm routing additional power to the medical bay and preparing the cargo bay airlock for pod retrieval. Dr. Vasquez was already moving toward the exit. I'll need someone to assist with the medical procedures. If the biosignatures are accurate, we're looking at major trauma surgery. Tommy can help, Marcus said. He's had field medic training. As the crew dispersed to their tasks, Marcus remained on the bridge to monitor their approach. The sensor readings became clearer as they drew closer, and what he saw made his breath catch. The life pod was in worse condition than their initial scans had indicated. Massive scoring along its hull suggested weapons fire, while several smaller breaches had been sealed with what appeared to be emergency foam that was already failing. Jesus, he whispered, this thing was shot to pieces. Lieutenant Mitchell looked up from his tactical station. Weapons fire? Multiple hits from different directions. Either this pod was caught in crossfire, or someone deliberately targeted it after ejection. The implications were disturbing. Firing on escape pods violated every civilized convention of warfare, human or alien. Even the most hardened military commanders recognized the sanctity of defenseless survivors. If someone had deliberately targeted this pod, it raised uncomfortable questions about the nature of the battle they'd stumbled upon. Could the damage be from debris impact? Mitchell asked, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Marcus enhanced the sensor image and studied the impact patterns. No, these are clean energy burns, consistent with ship-mounted pulse cannons. And the angles are all wrong for debris impact. Someone hunted this pod. 20 minutes into their approach, the life pod's emergency beacon suddenly changed frequency. Instead of the automated distress signal, a weak voice transmission began broadcasting. The universal translator struggled with the alien language, producing broken fragments that barely qualified as communication. Help, please, child, dying. Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the intercom from the medical bay. Marcus, are you getting this transmission? Affirmative, Doc. Sounds like there's more than one survivor in that pod. The translator continued its work, gradually improving its interpretation as more words were spoken. The voice was clearly female, speaking in the musical tones characteristic of Vorthen vocal cords. But there was something different about the accent, something that didn't match the military communications they'd intercepted during the war. Not soldier, civilian, research. Station. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. Civilian researchers. If the pod contained non-combatants, it cast the weapons damage in an even darker light. He thought about his brother David again, about the civilian transport that had been destroyed without mercy. Were humans capable of the same brutality? "Captain," Lieutenant Mitchell called out, his voice tight with concern. "That unknown contact is changing course. It's accelerating toward our position." Captain Rodriguez moved to the tactical display. "How long until intercept?" "At current acceleration, approximately 11 hours. But Captain, I'm reading weapon signatures on that contact. It's definitely a warship." The bridge atmosphere grew tense as everyone processed this information. They were committed to the rescue now, with a potentially hostile vessel bearing down on their position. The Meridian was a cargo hauler, not a warship. Her only weapons were point defense lasers designed to clear space debris, useless against military-grade armor and shielding. "We stick to the plan," Captain Rodriguez decided. "Complete the rescue and get out of here. Marcus, can we improve our departure time?" Marcus ran calculations on his tablet. "If we skip the full medical assessment and head straight for FTL minimum safe distance, we could cut 2 hours off our timeline." "Do it." The life pod grew larger on the main display as they approached. Up close, the damage was even more extensive. The pod's original sleek design had been mangled by repeated weapon strikes, its surface blackened and twisted. Emergency. Patches covered at least 6 hull breaches, while sparks occasionally erupted from damaged external systems. "How is anything still alive in there?" Tommy's voice came through the intercom from engineering. Marcus was wondering the same thing. The pod's life support readings were barely above 0. Internal temperature had dropped to near freezing, and the power systems were failing across the board. Whatever was inside had been fighting death for hours. "Bring us alongside, Captain." Rodriguez ordered. Marcus, prep the docking clamps. The Meridian maneuvered with surprising grace for such a large vessel, her thrusters firing in precise bursts to match the pod's tumbling trajectory. Marcus worked the docking controls with practiced efficiency, extending the mechanical arms that would secure the damaged craft to their hull. "Contact," he announced as the clamps engaged. "Pod is secure." Initiating atmospheric equalization. Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through the intercom. "Standing by in the airlock. Tommy's with me, along with full trauma equipment." Marcus monitored the atmospheric readings as their systems slowly pressurized the connection tunnel between ships. The pod's internal atmosphere was thin and contaminated with what appeared to be coolant vapors, but it was still breathable. Whatever was inside had been remarkably resourceful in surviving this long. "Equalization complete," Marcus reported. "You're clear to proceed, Doc." Through the security cameras, Marcus watched Dr. Vasquez and Tommy enter the connection tunnel. The damaged pod's airlock was manual only, its electronic systems long since failed. Tommy worked with cutting tools to override the mechanical locks while Dr. Vasquez prepared emergency medical equipment. "Got it," Tommy announced as the airlock finally cycled open. What they found inside made both of them freeze in shock. The pod's interior was a nightmare of damaged systems and improvised repairs, but curled in the center of the small space was something neither of them had expected. A Vorthen female, her blue-tinted skin pale from cold and blood loss, held a small child protectively against her chest. The child couldn't have been more than a few years old by human standards, though alien development made precise age difficult to determine. Both mother and child were unconscious, their breathing shallow and rapid. The female bore multiple wounds, including what appeared to be severe burns along her left arm and shoulder. "My God," Dr. Vasquez whispered. "Marcus, we've got a mother and child, both in critical condition. I need immediate transport to the medical bay." Marcus felt his world shift slightly as he processed this information. Not soldiers, not combatants. A mother desperately trying to save her child's life in the aftermath of a battle that had torn their world apart. The weapons damage on the pod took on a new, more horrifying dimension. "Tommy, help me get them onto the stretchers," Dr. Vasquez sighed, her medical training overriding any other considerations. The child's hypothermic and the mother's lost a lot of blood. As they carefully transferred the unconscious aliens to medical transport beds, Marcus found himself thinking about choice and consequence. In a few minutes, they would have 2 Vorthan civilians aboard their ship. Enemies, according to military designation. Refugees, according to any definition of human decency. The universal translator picked up faint words from the unconscious mother as they moved her. "Safe. Please. Keep safe." Even unconscious and dying, her first concern was for her child's safety. Marcus realized that maternal love transcended species boundaries, that the desperate need to protect one's offspring was perhaps the most universal force in the galaxy. "Got them secured," Dr. Vasquez reported. "Moving to medical bay now. Marcus, I'm going to need all the time you can give me. These injuries are severe." As the rescue team disappeared into the ship's interior, Marcus found himself alone on the bridge with Lieutenant Mitchell and Captain Rodriguez. The unknown warship continued its approach, still hours away but growing larger on their sensors with each passing minute. "Well," Captain Rodriguez said quietly, "we're committed now." Marcus nodded, watching the damaged life pod drift away as they released the docking clamps. Inside their ship, 2 alien civilians fought for their lives, protected only by the thin hull of a cargo vessel and the conscience of a human crew that had chosen compassion over caution. The real test was just beginning. Dr. Vasquez worked with methodical precision in the medical bay, her hands steady despite the weight of what she was attempting. The Vorthan female lay unconscious on the primary surgical table, while the child rested on a smaller examination bed nearby. Tommy monitored vital signs on equipment that had been designed for human physiology, making constant adjustments to account for alien biology. "Heart rate is stabilizing," Tommy reported, his voice carrying relief. "Whatever you did with that neural stimulator is working." The child had been the easier patient, suffering primarily from hypothermia and dehydration. Vorthan physiology responded well to human medical techniques, though their metabolism ran slightly faster in their blood. Chemistry required different medications. Dr. Vasquez had spent the first 30 minutes simply bringing the child's core temperature back to normal ranges. The mother presented far more complex challenges. Burns covered nearly 20% of her body, concentrated along her left side where she had apparently shielded her child from an explosion. Shrapnel wounds peppered her back and shoulders, while blood loss had brought her dangerously close to circulatory collapse. "Tommy, increase the plasma substitute drip to 15 milliliters per minute," Dr. Vasquez instructed while she carefully extracted a metal fragment from the patient's shoulder. "And monitor the neural response indicators. If I'm reading their physiology correctly, she should be regaining consciousness soon." The universal translator sat nearby, its speakers crackling occasionally with static. Dr. Vasquez had positioned it to activate the moment their patient began speaking, though she worried about the psychological trauma of waking up aboard a human vessel. From the Vorthan perspective, they had just been rescued by their enemies. Marcus's voice came through the intercom. "Doc, how are our patients?" "The child is stable and responding well. The mother is critical but improving. I need at least another 2 hours for the major surgery." "We may not have 2 hours. That warship is still approaching, and I'm picking up additional contacts on long-range sensors." Dr. Vasquez paused in her work. Additional contacts? Looks like a search pattern. Multiple vessels converging on this sector. The implications sent a chill through the medical bay. If military forces were actively searching the area, the Meridian's presence would be detected eventually. Their cargo ship's transponder identified them as civilian, but harboring enemy survivors would be difficult to explain to either side's military forces. Tommy looked up from his monitoring station. "Doc, the child's waking up." Small eyes opened, slowly revealing the characteristic silver irises of Vorthan biology. The child appeared disoriented, looking around the unfamiliar medical bay with growing confusion. When those eyes settled on Tommy's human features, fear replaced confusion. The child began speaking in rapid, high-pitched Vorthan, the universal. Translator struggling to keep pace with the emotional outburst. "Mama, where Mama? Scary place. Want Mama." Dr. Vasquez moved quickly to the child's bedside, her voice soft and reassuring despite the language barrier. "It's okay. You're safe. Your Mama is here." She gestured toward the surgical table where the child's mother lay unconscious. The child's fear diminished slightly upon seeing the familiar form, though wariness remained. Dr. Vasquez had treated enough frightened children to recognize the signs of deep trauma, regardless of species. "Tommy, see if you can find something in the supply lockers that might serve as a comfort item. A blanket, maybe something soft." While Tommy searched through their medical supplies, Dr. Vasquez returned to her patient. The major surgery was delicate work, requiring precise removal of embedded shrapnel while avoiding damage to vital organs. Vorthan anatomy was similar enough to human physiology that her training applied, but different enough to make every decision potentially dangerous. The child's mother stirred slightly, her breathing pattern changing as consciousness gradually returned. Dr. Vasquez had administered pain medication, but she knew the psychological shock of awakening would be significant. She positioned herself where the patient could see her clearly. When those eyes opened, consciousness came slowly, awareness filtering back in stages. The Vorthan female's eyes opened first, unfocused and confused. Then came the involuntary attempt to move, followed by the sharp intake of breath as pain reminded her of recent trauma. Finally, recognition of her surroundings and the stark realization that she was no longer in her life pod. The patient's eyes fixed on Dr. Vasquez's human features, and panic set in immediately. She tried to sit up despite her injuries, her voice rising in urgent Vorthan that the translator rendered as fragmented phrases. "Humans, we're a child. Please don't hurt. Mama." The child's voice cut through the panic, and the mother's head turned toward the sound. Seeing her offspring safe and alert, some of the tension left her body, though suspicion remained fixed on the humans tending to her. Dr. Vasquez spoke slowly, hoping the translator would convey not just her words but her intent. "You were dying in space. We brought you aboard our ship to save your lives. Your child is unharmed." The Vorthan female studied Dr. Vasquez's face intently, searching for deception or threat. Her voice, when she spoke again, carried exhaustion and desperate hope. "Why save us? Humans and Vorthans are enemies." It was a question Dr. Vasquez had been asking herself throughout the surgery. Why risk their ship, their mission, their lives for two alien strangers? The answer came to her with surprising clarity. Because you're a mother protecting her child. That transcends politics and war. The patient's expression softened slightly, though wariness remained. "I am Kira of the Theron Research Colony. This is my son Zeph. We are not soldiers." Dr. Vasquez nodded, continuing her work while maintaining eye contact. "I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez. This is Tommy Liu. We're aboard the cargo vessel Meridian." "Research colony," Tommy repeated, looking up from his instruments. "Doc, that explains the civilian readings we detected." Kira's voice grew stronger as the pain medication took effect. Theron was peaceful. Scientists, teachers, families. We studied stellar phenomena, shared our research with many species. Then the war came to our system. The universal translator conveyed not just words but emotional undertones, revealing the depth of loss in Kira's voice. Dr. Vasquez continued her surgical work while listening to a story that challenged everything she thought she knew about the conflict. The humans attacked first, Kira continued, her words carrying no accusation, only sadness. Military vessels demanding we surrender our research on gravitational manipulation. When our administrators tried to negotiate, they opened fire on the research platform. Dr. Vasquez felt her hands falter for a moment. Human forces attacking a civilian research facility contradicted everything she'd been told about the war's origins. According to official reports, the Vorthans had initiated hostilities by targeting human colonies. My husband was on the platform when it was destroyed, Kira said quietly. 3,000 researchers, their families, support staff, all gone in minutes. Tommy looked uncomfortable, his faith in human righteousness clearly shaken. Ma'am, are you sure it was human forces? The reports we've received. I know what I saw, Kira replied firmly. Human warships with Earth Federation markings. They took no prisoners, accepted no surrender. My son and I escaped only because we were in a supply shuttle when the attack began. The medical bay fell, silent except for the steady beeping of monitoring equipment. Dr. Vasquez processed this information while completing the final stages of surgery. If Kira's account was accurate, it painted the conflict in a very different light than official human narrative suggested. The life pod, Dr. Vasquez said carefully. The weapon's damage. Was that from the original attack? Kira's expression darkened. No, that happened 3 days ago. We had been drifting, trying to reach neutral space, when a Vorthan military patrol found us. When they discovered we were survivors from Theron, they became angry. Angry? Tommy asked. Theron's research was classified, apparently. Our survival meant potential intelligence leaks. The patrol commander decided we were security risks. The implication hit Dr. Vasquez like a physical blow. Your own people attacked you? Fear makes monsters of everyone, Kira said quietly. Human Vorthan, it doesn't matter. When survival is at stake, compassion becomes a luxury few can afford. Dr. Vasquez finished the last suture and stepped back from the surgical table. The physical wounds were treated, but the emotional trauma would take much longer to heal. She looked at this alien mother who had lost everything yet still protected her child with fierce determination. The approaching warship, Dr. Vasquez said. Do you know whose it is? Kira closed her eyes, exhaustion finally overtaking her. It doesn't matter. Human or Vorthan, they will see us as threats to be eliminated. That's what this war has become. Dr. Vasquez realized that their rescue mission had evolved into something far more complex than saving 2 lives. They now harbored witnesses to atrocities committed by both sides, refugees who challenged the simple narratives that made war possible. The question was no longer whether they could save Kira and Zeph, but whether saving them might be the first step towards something larger. Something that could challenge the cycle of violence consuming the galaxy. Outside the medical bay, the approaching warship continued its relentless pursuit, carrying with it the weight of a war that had forgotten the difference between combatants and civilians, between justice and revenge. The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as multiple contacts appeared on their sensors. Captain Rodriguez studied the tactical display with growing concern, while Marcus worked frantically to plot escape vectors. The approaching vessels formed a search grid, methodically sweeping through the debris field with military precision. 3 Vorthan destroyers and 2 human cruisers, Lieutenant Mitchell reported. They're coordinating their search patterns. This isn't coincidence, Captain. They're looking for something specific. Marcus felt his blood run cold as understanding dawned. They're looking for survivors from Theron colony. Kira and Zeph aren't just refugees. They're witnesses to war crimes committed by both sides. Dr. Vasquez's voice crackled through the intercom. Captain, our patients are stable, but Kira insists on speaking with you. She says it's urgent. Captain Rodriguez made her way to the medical bay, finding Kira sitting upright despite her injuries. The Vorthan female's silver eyes held a determination that transcended physical pain. Captain Rodriguez, Kira said through the universal translator, your people have shown unexpected kindness, but you don't understand the danger you're in. Those ships aren't here to rescue anyone. They're here to eliminate loose ends. What do you mean? Captain Rodriguez asked. Theron colony possessed research that both governments want buried. Gravitational manipulation technology that could revolutionize space travel or create devastating weapons. My husband and I were lead researchers. We know the truth about what happened there. Marcus joined them, his expression grim. Captain, long-range sensors show the search fleet is expanding their grid. They'll detect us within the hour. Kira struggled to her feet, her son Zeph clinging to her side. There's something else. Hidden in Zeph's genetic code are the complete research specifications. My husband modified our son's DNA before the attack, embedding the data where no scanner would think to look. The implications staggered everyone present. The child they'd rescued wasn't just a refugee. He was a living repository of technology that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Both sides would kill to possess that information or ensure it was destroyed. We have to run, Captain Rodriguez decided. Marcus, plot a course for the neutral zone, maximum burn. But as the Meridian's engines spooled up to full power, the first enemy vessels appeared on visual range. The hunt had found them, and escape seemed impossible. Yet in the cargo hold, human and Vorthan stood together, proving that compassion could bridge any divide, even in the darkest hours of war. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.